While other councils are still talking about high-tech enterprises, it seems Cessnock has stolen a march by attracting a world-standard research centre which will employ more than 100 chemists, physicists, computer scientists and mining engineers. Details of the ICI Mining Services Technology Park were unveiled today at Cessnock Town Hall, presiding politicians labelling it as a non-political event, admitting the prize had required all-round cooperation. In fact, the research facility is only just in the Cessnock Council area. The 300-hectare site is off George Booth Drive, just west of Mount Sugarloaf. There, invited guests were shown what is proposed, and that's essentially a bushland campus for the boffins who work out how to make mining explosives do their job more efficiently. $8 million will be spent over the next 2 years and a total of $25 million over 10 years to create a centre of excellence. The region's educational facilities and university played an important part in attracting ICI to the Hunter.
We chose the Hunter Valley in the end because it seemed to be an area that had lots of amenities for our people. It was close to our customers. It had, of course, the University of Newcastle, which is important to us. And we believe it's got sufficient attractiveness to have people come from around Australia to join us here.
For those who've seen mining blasts, rumours over recent weeks of explosives factories had created concern, but they needn't have worried. The components of mining explosives can be found in many garden sheds, and this $500,000 truck, also built in Newcastle, is the actual factory. The explosives only become explosives as they're mixed at the blast site. The only test explosions to be done at the research centre are for computer modelling and won't be heard outside the perimeter.
It was a confident camp that headed for Sea Eagle territory Saturday evening, convinced that they would break the away match hoodoo. But it was a subdued team which returned home last night after handing Manly a win. Referee problems again surfaced with a penalty count going the Sea Eagles' way 15-5. For the second week in a row, the Knights have run into penalty strife, something that will have to be rectified if they are going to be a force in this year's Winfield Cup.
It's a common sense problem. It's something we'll talk about and try and eradicate because, when you can tackle down their end, for 3 or 4 tackles in a row, and of course it's very unhealthy to let them out or piggyback them out by giving them a penalty, and that happened twice, so we've got to look to stop that, and it is a common sense problem.
On the plus side for Newcastle is the brilliant form shown by the President's Cup and reserve grade teams, and there are plenty of players pushing for first grade spots.
We've got a few injury worries there at the moment, Mike, and we'll probably be naming a side with a couple of substitutes in regards to injuries just to see how we go. So we're probably making a firmer decision later in the week, although we will be conferring with the selectors tomorrow and just see what happens. At the moment we're just in the midst of watching the reserve grade. I'm talking to David Waite and the other guys who watch the reserve grade and certainly yes, they are putting a certain amount of pressure on and on the players that played first grade.
Laurie Bell is one of a growing number of Australian women who work full-time on ships other than passenger carriers and the first female ever to work on the Resolution. Her duties will be as ship's second cook, and while she loves the cooking, it was the desire to be at sea that made the job so attractive.
Actually, I've always wanted to go to sea. First off, not actually as a cook, but as it happens, I started cooking and enjoyed it and decided that's what I'd go away as. If I could get away, and I tried and I did.
What is it about the job that you think you'll most enjoy once you do get out to sea?
Well, I sort of enjoy being on the water. The people on board are really nice. It's like a big family. It's like a big happy family. It's a hard job. The cooking's hard and things like that, but it's enjoyable. I enjoy it. And it's nice to see them when they all eat full plates and come back for more and tell you that your soup's beautiful and it's, it makes you feel good.
Being the only female on a ship with over 30 male crew members doesn't faze Laurie in the least, and her fellow crew members are happy to have her aboard.
I think most of the boys are pretty pleased with Laurie. She's a good shipmate, everybody gets along with her well, and she's a good cook. She's the best second cook I've had.
It's 5 weeks since the tan bin birthed in Newcastle. What was to be a mercy dash to pick up urgently needed hospital and medical supplies has reached an apparent impasse. After 2 years of planning, Newcastle Overseas Aid, a local community-based organisation, amassed more than $3 million worth of vital equipment to donate to Vietnam. The tan bin was dispatched to pick up the cargo, but at the 11th hour, local maritime officials discovered serious problems with the 20-year-old bulk carrier. Among them are badly rusted hull and deck supports. Transport officials quickly declared the ship unseaworthy to make the return journey to Vietnam. Since then, the tan bin and her crew have been in no man's land, caught between the urgent need for her precious cargo in Vietnam and the Australian government's insistence that the ship be safe enough to tackle the high seas. Shipping Minister Bob Brown says there are two options. Arrange a soft loan to Vietnam to pay for the repairs estimated to top $1 million, or secure the ship sufficiently so it can be towed to Vietnam by a seaworthy vessel. But one of the key players in organising the medical aid package has called for immediate action, urging federal authorities to accept the Vietnamese government's offer to accept responsibility so the ship can sail.
Giving those guarantees, I know, will not take away the moral responsibility if anything happened on its return trip. But by the same token, I suppose the captain has said, well, I came to Australia through 2 Force 7 gales, and the ship performed very well indeed. There was not any time was there the slightest danger, and it would seem that I could return under those same conditions without any possibility of the ship being affected in any way.
The tan bin's insurance underwriter has washed its hands of the vessel while in its present condition. The future of the ailing bulk carrier now rests with high-level negotiations between the Vietnamese and Australian governments. For the moment, no resolution is in sight. Leslie Robinson, NBN News.
The guest took a trip back in time to the golden days of steam in a loco painstakingly restored by the training company's apprentices. Loco number 10 is the South Maitland Railway's oldest steam locomotive and was found in a state of disrepair on the former railway's workshop complex. The Hunter Valley Training Company bought the site from Coal and Allied Industries last year. Today was the official handing over of deeds by CNI Chairman Sir Neil Curry.
Because we're delighted to see that a place like this, which has been so much part of the history of this area, is now being taken over to train young people to look after the future.
The training company employs nearly 900 apprentices, working with more than 400 contractors. They're employed in 7 divisions reaching from Tweed Heads to beyond Wollongong. Trades include metalworking, building, industry, hospitality, gardening and more. But here trainees learn practical workshop skills in boiler making, fitting and electrical mechanics, and part of this has been the restoration work on the historical buildings and steam locos. But soon apprentices will gain unique high-tech experience when the General Electric Corporation sets up a $6 million plant on land leased from the training company.
It's high-tech, it's the best in Australia and the best in the world. At the moment, these units are either sent to the United Kingdom or to Japan. Now they'll be brought to Maitland and worked on by young Australians.
At times it seems like a lifetime ago, but actually it's 3 months to the day since our city was devastated by that earthquake. Since then a lot of water has passed under the bridge as Novocastrians have knuckled down to rebuilding their city and their lives. In fact, for many it now seems like just a bad dream, something to be pushed away to make room for more positive thoughts. But for others there can be no forgetting. People like Yvette Waugh and Rick Murray, both who were inside the Workers' Club when it collapsed. Yvette was carried from the building in the arms of a fireman, her pelvis and 3 ribs broken, blood pouring from a huge cut to her head. Today Yvette still feels the agony with every step she takes. Jobless, she spends her days in doctors' surgeries, lying in bed or at the hydrotherapy pool at Rankin Park Hospital.
I haven't had any benefits from the hydrotherapy yet,
except on the day I feel great. My body sort of isn't so stiff and sore. You know, I feel like I'm carrying an armour plate on that part of my body. It's not mine. It's something I drag around with me. That part of my body is. If it was my house that was hurt, I could get it fixed. You know, I could get a new one. I could get a brand new house. And I've got to try and get my body back to it was. I can't go and buy a new body.
Just last week, Rick climbed out of his wheelchair for the first time. Now he uses walking sticks to hobble about for short distances. At times, he says, the pain is enormous, but he adds that's much easier to bear than the pain of being forgotten.
We never got a get well card or anything from Workers Club or the Lord Mayor or anyone, you know.
You're just forgotten, you're just pushed aside, you're just part of the rubble that they've carted away.
Cornett was the holder of the Australian Featherweight title, and Craig Peavy was trying his darndest to take it away from him. Both fighters threw plenty of leather, and Peavy was scoring with excellent combinations. Cornett came back with a couple of big rights to have the Novocastrian on the ropes. Referee Billy Mail cautioned Peavy for holding, and it wasn't long before Peavy was defending grimly. Right on the bell of round 5, Cornett connected with a big overhand right that opened up the cut that ended the fight. A bitterly disappointed Craig Peavy was examined by Dr Lou Lewis, who conferred with referee Males, and they agreed the fight should be stopped, and Renato Cornett retained his Australian title.
ITN is a production and transmission company. It was established 2 years ago specifically to develop a new television service for the hunter, the multi-point distribution system. The company planned to buy and produce specialist programs which anyone could receive by installing a special antenna. When it was announced, it was heralded as a great win for the hunter, but now ITN is moving out and the plans have been put on ice. The board will soon almost certainly decide to relocate to Sydney. The ITN building in New Common Street was critically damaged by the earthquake, meaning it has to move somewhere, and the company says local production orders have hit rock bottom.
I believe the businesses in Newcastle, the majority of them are taking a very deep breath and hoping to hang on. I know they've talked to 30 to 40% of businesses closing down. Companies are not quite sure which way they should be moving with their development, their corporate decisions.
In fact, more than 95% of ITN's production work is now for companies from outside Newcastle. The pay television focus has also shifted. ITN says it's still committed to getting MDS up and running, but it's now looking towards metropolitan markets. The company believes it's won a licence to broadcast into Canberra and is bidding for access to Sydney and Melbourne.
Yes, we will eventually transmit those programs into this region.
That's a long way down the track.
That may be when Newcastle becomes a lot more economically stable.
The man, thought to be from Florida, was arrested in the main street of Morisset at 6:30 yesterday morning, after residents had complained about his drunken state. The cells here at Morisset were considered unsuitable for housing an intoxicated person, and with the station only manned partially throughout the day, it was decided to move the 31-year-old to Toronto. Once at Toronto, the man was placed in a cell and routinely checked by police. Although intoxicated, officers report the man was in good spirits. Inspector Bob Lebrigan says as the afternoon wore on, concerns started to mount over their international guest.
He was checked on regularly through the day.
and early in the afternoon we were getting ready to release him. His state of intoxication had declined, had reduced, but we found that he seemed to be acting irrationally. So it was then decided that some sort of psychiatric assessment should be made, and whilst this was being arranged, he seemed to become worse.
Paramedics were called to the station and transported the man to the casualty section of Wallsend Hospital, where he died shortly after. Police now have a difficult task of contacting the man's relatives. It's believed he had no fixed address while in Australia, but recently spent a lot of time on the Central Coast. Darren Curtis for NBN News.
Mount Arrow management described the deal as a merger rather than a purchase. The day-to-day operations will remain in the hands of the Australian arm of the business. The company has two main properties, 130 hectares just north of Jerry's Plains and 20 hectares near Broke, but also buys in substantial amounts of grapes from contracted growers. The injection of funds will enable Mount Arrow to increase its plantings of grapes to nearly 100 hectares and further expand its production facilities. The involvement of Hokuriku, also Japan's largest Coca-Cola bottler, will give Mount Arrow access to a wide distribution network in Japan and new markets on the west coast of the United States and in Canada.
These pastures, nestled along the banks of the Hunter River at the Lochinvar Equestrian Centre, have been transformed into a mini-city. Over the next few days, they'll be trampled by hundreds of sets of pounding hooves as the competitors in the first ever Lochinvar horse trials go through their paces. Today was day one, and in the usual three-day event format consisted of the dressage stage. Riders went before the judges in the junior, novice and advanced sections, the latter being comprised of 10 of Australia's most talented equestrian combinations, many for whom success over the next few days could well be their first step towards riding at Barcelona.
We would have, I think, probably the cream of the young riders trying to upset the established top bracket of riders, and they have to do it this year because next year it'll be too late. The selectors will write them off as not having had enough experience.
Tomorrow we'll see the staging of the cross-country leg, and that's where many of the hopefuls are expected to come unstuck. Designed by internationally recognised horseman Wayne Roycroft at a cost of more than $30,000, it comprises 22 kilometres of gruelling terrain and very difficult jumps. Well, if there is to be a make or break point during this whole three-day event, it's possibly right here at the bungee jump. It's only 2.5 kilometres from home, but according to many of the competitors, the tough going will never have started until they've made it here. And already many who've walked the course have described it as sheer hell.
One of the most amazing things was to watch the riders' faces as they walk to this fence, and it jumps way out into the Hunter River. It doesn't actually go into the Hunter River, but it sure looks like it. We've tried to make it so that if the rider isn't quite there at the very top, they don't actually die. So it's an encouraging course, but anyone who completes tomorrow without faults will have very good reason to be very pleased with themselves.
Sunday we'll see the show jumping leg. Organisers are hoping for more than 10,000 spectators over the next 2 days, this being the only three-day event still being staged in New South Wales. When Trevor Hocking and 5 other members of the Newcastle and Port Stephens Game Fishing Club cut open their catch last night, they found what is believed to be human remains.
When we put it on the weigh station, we generally have a look to see what they've been eating, and in this particular instance it turned out to be human bones.
Did you know straight away that it was human remains?
Well, initially when the first few pieces came out, no, we didn't. However, when we had a human hand, that was the first time that we really knew there was a human.
As well as the hand, there was also a backbone, pelvis, one arm and 2 legs broken off at the knees. According to Peter, the remains had not been in the shark very long.
We estimate about a day, because the acids in a shark's stomach are very, very strong, and the entire thing would probably be dissolved within a 2-day time.
The men were fishing on this boat 70 kilometres southeast of Port Stephens. At 1:30 they hooked a 252-kilogram tiger shark and for 4.5 hours struggled to land it.
Yeah, this particular fish was a very active shark. We can generally catch them within an hour to an hour and a half, but this one took 4.5 hours and took us out probably 6 miles during the struggle.
When the shark had been weighed at Nelson Bay and the reality of the gruesome find revealed, the police were called. The remains were taken to the local polyclinic and then on to the Newcastle morgue. This afternoon they were taken to Sydney for extensive forensic testing and are in the hands of the state coroner. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
The days of the quick quiz and a spin around the block are over. The Newcastle Motor Registry has gone high-tech and aspiring learners are the first to feel the effects. A computer now controls all road rule testing, selecting 45 questions from a bank of more than 400. As computers can't be bribed, the RTA is hailing the system as a breakthrough in security. But it also has the added effect of ensuring learners know the rules of the road like never before. A score of 41 out of 45 is required just to pass.
Yeah, it's very thorough. It'll cover, or does cover, just about every aspect that's in the motor traffic handbook. And the only advice to applicants is study the motor traffic handbook. The computer part is very easy. It's very computer friendly. There's only 4 buttons and an enter button. I think anyone could do it.
For those short on time behind the wheel, it can be a daunting task. But for people with years of experience under their seatbelts, it wouldn't seem to pose any problems. Or would it?
Too easy.
Too easy.
Claim that one on my insurance. Whoops.
From the confines of the passenger's seat, I'm Bruce Mackenzie for NBN News. It was hardly ideal weather for a day in the park, but Michael Yabsley wasn't about to be deterred. He's considering a proposal from Newcastle City Council to have periodic prisoners ordered to clean up the city's parkland reserves. Council says it doesn't have the manpower to do the job, and the minister believes if the convicts aren't made to do it, it simply won't get done.
It's often work that in terms of council priorities or state government priorities may be regarded as marginal, and it's a very appropriate means to undertake community work that, as I said, may otherwise not be done at all.
If adopted, the plan will be the most extensive of its kind in the state. Mr Yabsley says he expects some adverse reaction from unions and concerned residents, but he's given the scheme his stamp of approval.
You couldn't be sure that the person you were sitting next to on the bus this morning, or the person who you'll be sitting next to at a restaurant later in the evening, is not someone serving community service orders or will go into an institution this weekend for periodic detention.
A decision is expected on the proposal within 3 weeks. Bruce Mackenzie, NBN News.